Hello, podheads, and welcome back to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. This is your host for today, Kate Carter.
This is Kylie Colwell.
And I'm Holly Spear.
Sometimes when we hear about a monster, we'd think you'd recognize one if we saw it. But what if the monster was smiling? What if he was well known? What if he wore a Patriots jersey and scored touchdowns on Sunday afternoons? Today's episode is about a man who had it all: fame, wealth, family, and lost everything in the most violent and shocking way imaginable. This is the story of Aaron Hernandez, the NFL superstar who went from end zone glory to a prison cell and a death that left more questions than answers. Aaron Joseph Hernandez was born on November 6, 1989 in Bristol, Connecticut. Bristol is a small town where football isn't just a sport, it's kind of more of like a religion. Like, people love football in Bristol. Aaron's dad, his name is Dennis Hernandez. I'm going to call him Daddy Hernandez, was a local legend himself. He was a former UConn football player nicknamed the King. And Daddy Hernandez was really strict. He was super intimidating, and he was driven by a belief basically that like his sons, Aaron and DJ, had to be stars. Like, they were destined to be famous. Honestly, they kind of were. So Aaron grew up in a home where his overall strength was praised, but all of his weaknesses were like super punished. Daddy Hernandez pushed his boys really hard. They constantly had practices in their backyard. They did drills out in the freezing cold and snow, and they would run football plays until it was time for bed, sometimes even later. To outsiders, this looked like a family filled with discipline, but inside the walls of the Hernandez home, there were definitely like anger issues, rage issues, and control. Friends and relatives later recalled how the Hernandez household could shift from laughter to rage within seconds. Aaron adored his father, but also greatly feared him, just like DJ, his older brother. There were stories of physical punishment, screaming matches, and a constant sense of walking on eggshells around Daddy Hernandez. But Terry, Aaron's mom, was an administrative assistant for the local school system, and she was quite the opposite. She was pretty involved in her son's lives, but was often caught in the middle between her like husband's temper and anger issues. The family's finances were always a little bit tight as well, but the Hernandez's boys' talent on the football field kind of gave the family hope that football would someday be their ticket out of like the mediocre, I wouldn't call it poverty. They were like middle lower class, I would say. Aaron attended Bristol Central High School. There, he showed signs of extraordinary athletic ability. He was bigger, faster, and more coordinated than almost anyone his age. But long before his football stardom, Aaron had already learned at 16 years old kind of how to hide a pain behind a smile. And that's because on January 6th, 2006, Daddy Dennis Hernandez went in for a routine hernia surgery and ended up dying unexpectedly from complications. The loss absolutely shattered Aaron and his brother DJ, and by all accounts, Daddy Hernandez had been the anchor of the family, and without him, Aaron's world began to slowly spiral. Aaron began withdrawing emotionally. He started hanging out with older, rougher crowds, and this is when he really started experimenting with drugs as well. Shortly after Daddy Hernandez's death, Mama Hernandez began dating a man who had quite a criminal record. The boyfriend had been in and out of prison for years for dealing drugs, and this relationship that she had with her boyfriend ended up causing like a deep resentment between herself and her son Aaron. He thought that his mom dating someone else was pretty much like a betrayal of his father's memory. And so verbal arguments began happening often, or more often, in their house. And basically, Aaron spent less and less time at home while in high school. Now, while he was in school, it was quite obvious, like I said earlier, that his athletic gifts were pretty much undeniable. The dude was huge, fast, and strong. He was also a multi-sport athlete. He played football, basketball, and track. He was 6'2" and over 200 pounds. And on his high school football team, Aaron broke state records for receiving yards and touchdowns. And he even got national attention when he won Gatorade Football Player of the Year for the state of Connecticut, which this obviously like had recruiters flocking to him, basically. Big powerhouse football programs like Florida, Miami, and UConn all were super interested in recruiting him for college. But while that was all going on, Aaron's home life still really wasn't doing well. He was still hanging out with those older dudes in Bristol. And unfortunately, all these guys were known for their criminal backgrounds. A lot of them were dealing drugs, but also would get into like violent fights. And so these so called friends of Aaron weren't classmates or teammates. They were legitimately dudes like in their late 20s and 30s hanging out with high schoolers. So that's weird. But for Aaron, being around that toughness gave him like a sense of belonging because that's what he grew up with his dad. So back at home, Mama Hernandez began dating a new man, which this is a little odd. This dude was named Jeffrey Cummings. This was the same man that had once been married to Aaron's cousin. So it was actually Mama Hernandez's niece's ex-husband.
That is a little weird.
It's a little weird. And this Jeffrey guy, shocker, also had a violent history. And he would actually later on be arrested for stabbing his ex-wife, the cousin. She survived. But besides that, Aaron saw Jeffrey as an intruder in his dad's home. So the arguments between the two of them were constant and would get physical quite often. So Aaron pretty much just stopped coming home. He would like stay at friends' houses. But despite his home life, Aaron kept performing well on the football field. In his senior year in high school, he verbally committed to the University of Connecticut, which is where his older brother DJ was already playing as the quarterback. But Aaron ended up changing his mind once Urban Meyer, the head coach of the University of Florida Gators, came calling. Now, Coach Meyer and at the time his star quarterback Tim Tebow personally visited Aaron in Connecticut, and they promised him not only a scholarship, but a chance to play on one of the best teams in the nation, which happened to also have a direct pipeline to the NFL, which was obviously Aaron's goal. So at just 17 years old, and still while technically a senior in high school, Aaron graduated early and moved to Gainesville, Florida, where he started college months ahead of everyone else. So when Aaron arrived at UF in early 2007, he was only 17 years old, so definitely the youngest kid on the team. But on the field, you couldn't really tell a difference. He looks like everybody else. But coaches and teammates described Aaron as two different people. One moment he would be charming, funny, energetic, and then in the next, his temper would explode without like any kind of warning. There were stories of fights at practices, arguments that turned physical, and late night partying that pretty much spiraled out of control all the time. Aaron was also known to be a heavy drinker. He smoked weed on the daily, and he associated with the kind of people who didn't belong pretty much anywhere near a college athlete. At first, Coach Meyer brushed it off because Aaron was producing on the field and he was like a key contributor to the team. But behind closed doors, there were giant red flags just piling up. So one of those red flags, first serious incident, I would say, when Aaron punched a bar manager in the head after refusing to pay his tab. Reportedly, the tab was only around $15. And the man was knocked out cold, and Aaron faced felony assault charges, but the case quietly disappeared.
As they do in college football programs.
Yep. Another incident, police investigated a double shooting outside of a nightclub that was reportedly involved Aaron and a few teammates. Two men were shot while sitting at a traffic light after an altercation with some of the Gator players earlier that night. Aaron's name came up in the investigation, but shocker, once again, the charges were dropped. Back on the football field, Aaron's personal demons were only growing stronger. He began showing signs of heavy mistrust and emotional instability, which these traits would later be linked to a CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is a brain disease caused by repeated head trauma. But at the time, everything Aaron did just kind of looked like anger, aggression, being a big, bad, angry person. So after playing for UF for only a year, Aaron had already been suspended multiple times for failing drug tests, skipping team meetings, and constantly arguing with coaches. Coach Meyer reportedly arranged multiple counseling and mentorships for Aaron, but none of them ever really stuck. And so when Aaron finally declared for the NFL draft in 2010, he was definitely one of the most talented players in his position, but his draft potential was like pretty much plummeted because teams were scared. Like there were all these rumors about Aaron and his off-field behavior, his drug use, his violent tendencies, and like teams didn't really want to like take a chance, which I get, especially with it being 2010. But surprise, surprise, the New England Patriots, who were known for their strict discipline under Coach Bill Belichick, decided to take a chance on Aaron. And the Patriots picked Aaron in the 4th round of the 2010 draft with number 113 overall. Aaron was still a baby. He was only 20 years old when he entered the draft. And on the field, just like everyone saw, he was electric. He was so fast for his size. He was strong enough to bulldoze defenders and was quick enough to outrun safeties, which is huge. And alongside his fellow tight end and later friend, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron became a part of a duo that changed the way the NFL used tight ends. But like before, off the field, Aaron's life was splitting into two very different worlds. So now Aaron resided in North Attleboro in a mansion that he paid for with his big old paycheck that he was getting. And Aaron was also now engaged. His fiance's name was Cheyenne Jenkins, and she had known Aaron since elementary school, and the two had actually even dated in high school, but broke up at some point and didn't reconnect until Aaron was drafted by the Patriots and came back home area. During their engagement, the pair also became pregnant, and Cheyenne gave birth to their baby girl, AVL, on November 6, 2012. And from the outside, everything looked good for Aaron. He, on social media, pretty much was always posting pictures of, football, a smiling family, and going to fun events, doing charities. He seemed like a man who had settled down with a wife and kid, had a promising career, and pretty much like he had outgrown his past. But Aaron was still connected to the same street culture and a violent environment that he had grown up in. At night, most practices, Aaron's home became a revolving door for these bad friends that he still had, the criminal and gang members, the ones that had a taste for drugs, parties, and guns. And Aaron's neighbors often reported loud music, fights, and visitors at all hours of the day and night to the police. Because of the drugs, Aaron's paranoia began to intensify. He installed multiple security cameras around his house and property and would often be found pacing, checking all of the locks and doors. He, at some point, decided that people were following him and watching him and trying to get him, which happens a lot with drugs. Which, I will say they could have been, though. So I don't really know if it was paranoia. But because of this, Aaron began carrying a gun everywhere, even to practice. Some of Aaron's teammates noticed this change as well. He would show up to team meetings red-eyed from smoking weed or being hungover from the night before, and a few teammates tried to intervene, but Aaron's charm and charisma made it easy for him to deflect any concerns. And honestly, as long as he was performing well on Sundays, most people just kind of looked the other way. Aaron had the bad boy stereotype pinned against him, but that everybody knew Aaron was kind of the bad kid, but he was a really good football player. And in 2012, things seemed better than ever on paper. Aaron signed a $40 million contract extension with the Patriots, but just a few months later, in July, two men were shot and killed in their car in Boston's South End after leaving a nightclub. Witnesses recalled seeing a silver SVU pulling up beside them, shots being fired, and then the car disappeared. The case went cold for nearly a year, and no one connected it to Aaron Hernandez. Well, at least not yet. But in 2013, Aaron started spiraling even more. He was smoking more, sleeping less, and cutting ties with pretty much anyone he thought could potentially betray him. His friends said his mood flipped within seconds, and it got worse. One second he'd be laughing, the next second he'd be glaring with rage. Definitely bipolar. And then one night in June 2013, Aaron received a text from a friend. This friend's name was Odin Lloyd. Odin was a semi-pro football player and also happened to be the boyfriend of Cheyenne's sister. So he was part of Aaron's family and social circle. The guys knew each other super well, saw each other all the time. But something between them had shifted. And after an argument and a small falling out, suddenly Odin seemed to make Aaron nervous. A few days later, on June 17th, 2013, a jogger spotted something strange. There was a body sprawled out face down near a gravel pit. It was Odin Lloyd. He was only 27 years old at the time, and he had been shot 6 times, 2 bullets to the chest, 1 to his back, 1 to his forearm, and 2 in his side. His right arm had been twisted and broken behind him, and his body had been dumped in an industrial park that happened to be less than 1 mile from Aaron Hernandez's house. A day before Odin's body was found, so on June 16th, there was a turning point. Surveillance cameras later pieced together Aaron Hernandez leaving his mansion around 1:30 a.m., driving a dark-colored SUV and eventually picking up his friend Odin. Witnesses later recounted seeing him in the vicinity and that he was tense and agitated and definitely moving like stealthy. Aaron's mindset had shifted from calculated charm to cold, and he was like almost in this like predatory focus. Investigators would later restruct this timeline from phone calls and texts, surveillance footage, and eyewitness testimonies. But pretty much there was a chain of evidence that left little doubt about Aaron's presence the night Odin was killed. Text sent just before Odin's death, Odin texted his sister saying, quote, "Did you see who I'm with? NFL, just so you know," end quote. Odin pretty much was saying he was with Aaron. On June 17th, Odin Lloyd would never return home, and hours later, his body was discovered hidden in that secluded area behind the warehouses. When Odin's body was found, the crime scene was fortunately, like we don't hear in most cases, well documented. There were tire tracks, shell casings, and footprints, everything that had been taken into evidence. The on site forensic teams noticed the positioning of Odin's body, trajectory of bullets, and the absence of defense wounds, which all kind of suggested that he had been caught completely off guard. He didn't really realize what was about to happen. And DNA evidence later tied Odin indirectly to Aaron's vehicle. Ballistic testing linked the murder weapon to a gun that Aaron owned.
Case closed.
Inside Aaron's home, investigators found fresh trash bags that were filled with shredded papers, a pile of clothes that still smelled of gunpowder, and a rented Nissan Altima that had been recently cleaned. Now, in that rental car's cup holder, this is such a weird like detail, but in the cup holder, police found a chewed up piece of bubblegum, which you think is harmless. Wrong. DNA analysis later confirmed that the gum belonged to both Aaron Hernandez and Odin Lloyd.
They chewed the same
Oh.
piece of gum?
Somebody chewed that piece of gum, and then somebody else chewed that piece of gum.
There's a whole nother crime happening at an exponential level right here.
I hate to say, but I'm going to assume that was Odin's gum, and then Aaron chewed on it at some point.
Literally, shut up. That's what?
But yeah, so it kind of tied the two of them together. Not a good
I'll
look.
say.
Anyways, so detectives quickly began to piece together a picture of what had happened that night. Aaron's car, a silver SUV, was tracked via surveillance cameras in the area, and cell phone records placed him at key locations. Even as investigators worked tirelessly, Aaron's public persona remained still that of a professional athlete. He was still training 24/7. He was still signing autographs and smiling and making like those NFL appearances. But behind the closed doors, paranoia and fear dominated everything that he did because obviously he was under investigation now. And the investigation intensified when Odin's phone and social media messages revealed a big old web of interactions with Aaron leading up to the days of Odin's death. Messages from Odin to Aaron were like super normal, friendly, but all of the responses from Aaron suggested that he was pissed off. And detectives also discovered at the same time that Aaron had access to multiple firearms that could have potentially been used that night, which included a .380 caliber handgun, which he had just purchased ammunition for shortly before Odin's murder. So when the authorities finally moved to arrest Aaron because of the whole pile of evidence they had against him, they did so with so much evidence, but it wasn't just physical, it was also psychological evidence as well. The case against him wasn't just about physical stuff that the detectives and investigators had found, but it was pretty much a picture of a man who had like spiraled into obsession, anger, rage, paranoia. And honestly, interviews with Aaron's family and friends kind of painted that picture as well, which sucks for Aaron. But they talked about how Aaron had become increasingly isolated. He basically trusts nobody, and he had a constant like sense of fear. He always thought something bad was going to happen. The trial that followed was a giant national like spectacle and view. The question that everybody wanted answered was why? Why would a multi-million-dollar football star risk everything to kill a man like Odin Lloyd, who was not just a friend, but a teammate in pickup games and a soon-to-be relative? And the prosecution argued it came pretty much down to like disrespect. Apparently, days leading up to the murder, Aaron and Odin had gone out partying together at a club. And while at the club, Odin had been talking to people that Aaron didn't like. And with his really bad paranoia and violent world that Aaron lived in, he pretty much was like, that's it for Odin. He's probably planning against me. So that exact same night, Aaron texted two of his friends, two guys named Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz, and asked them to drive up from Bristol. The two of them brought a car, a gun, and a plan. Prosecutors said Aaron picked up Odin around 2:30 a.m. and promised a quick drive for errands. And honestly, Odin probably didn't think twice about it. There was no reason for him not to trust Aaron. But when they pulled into that industrial lot not too far from Aaron's home, Odin most likely realized something was wrong. They had him step out of the car. He might have even tried talking to Aaron and his friends, maybe even begged. And then 6 rounds sounded off, and then silence. When the trial began in January 2015, the courtroom was an absolute circus. Every day, reporters filled the benches. Media zoomed in on Aaron Hernandez, who obviously was clean cut, in a suit, not speaking a word. And the same man who used to score touchdowns in Foxborough was now writing down notes behind a defense table, accused of murdering his family member. And the evidence against Aaron, well, overwhelming, devastating. So jurors saw graphic crime scene photos of Odin's lifeless body sprawled out in the dirt. His shirt had been soaked with blood, and there were bullet holes throughout his chest and back. They also saw pictures of that blue bubble gum I talked about in the rental car. They saw their surveillance video of Aaron walking through his home, gun in hand, pacing. Prosecutors painted Aaron as this man who pretty much thought he was untouchable. He killed people for pride and then tried to erase the evidence. I mean, one witness even described how Aaron's home surveillance system, quote, mysteriously stopped working, end quote, a few hours after Odin died. Another witness testified that Aaron had called him the next morning asking him if he knew how to, quote, wipe down a car, end quote. But when it came to the emotional blows and the trauma, Odin's family definitely took the most of them. On stand, they spoke about how how he was as a person and described the moment that they learned he was gone. And while they spoke, every single person in that packed courtroom was silent. So Aaron's defense team, they were led by a superstar attorney. His name is James Sultan. And he pretty much from the very beginning never denied that Aaron wasn't there the night that Odin died. I mean, he really couldn't, but there were videos, phone calls, texts, everything that placed his client, Aaron Hernandez, at the scene. But the defense's argument was simple. Aaron might have been there, but he didn't pull the trigger. The defense pointed their fingers at the friends Wallace and Ortiz, saying one of them had to have killed Odin and maybe Aaron was just a bystander, a witness.
That defense always works.
Yeah. The defense team also tore into the state's forensics. They said that the gum wasn't really evidence. Like, couldn't contamination just mix up Odin and Aaron's DNA since it was Aaron's car? They also questioned why police were given certain pictures, but all of those pictures had been cropped. And why was the murder weapon never found? But even as the defense poked holes in the prosecution's case, there was just too much evidence against Aaron still. And the jury wasn't just seeing a few coincidences here and there. They were obviously seeing a pattern, and that pattern pointed directly at Aaron Hernandez. So on April 15th, 2015, after 36 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. Aaron Hernandez was found guilty of first-degree murder. As the verdict was read, Aaron showed very little emotion as the words were heard throughout the courtroom. Aaron's mother was crying. She was there. His fiance was shaking her head, had tears streaming down her face. And the judge's sentence was mandatory, life in prison without the possibility of parole. But for many, justice didn't seem like enough because the man who once had everything, the fame, the wealth, the family, had really thrown it away for nothing. Like he wasn't getting anything out of Odin's death to begin with. Aaron now resided in a tiny concrete box, and at first he played the part. He was this cool athlete still. He smiled for photos. He wrote letters to his fiance. He lifted weights every day. He even signed autographs, but cracks started to show pretty fast within a few days to weeks. Aaron couldn't sleep at all. He complained of hearing noises at night. Prison guards said Aaron would wake up sweating and pacing and muttering things, and that sometimes at night they would find him just staring at his wall for hours, not moving or talking to anyone. Even from behind bars, Aaron was still determined to fight, this time just not physically. He had his legal team launch an appeal, arguing that the evidence in Odin Lloyd's case had been mishandled, and that also because of his fame, Aaron hadn't received a fair trial either. But get this, I didn't know this. Under Massachusetts law, if a prisoner dies while their appeal is pending, their conviction is erased. So it was almost like if they died while the appeal was pending, they were never found guilty in the first place. Now, you might think Aaron's story ends there, but it didn't. While serving time for Odin's murder, Aaron ended up being charged with another crime. Remember, I talked previously about the 2012 double homicide in Boston. Those deaths were of Daniel D. Abarro and Safaro Furtado. And during that trial, prosecutors claimed that Aaron fired into a car after one of the men had accidentally spilled a drink on him at a nightclub. Again, Aaron acted out against something that was so small and petty, something that shouldn't have mattered, but this time, Aaron was acquitted. Jurors said the evidence wasn't enough, and it seems like for maybe, just maybe, a moment, Aaron was finding a little sliver of hope. And for the first time in years, Aaron looked generally hopeful in his courtroom. He mouthed, quote, "I love you" to Cheyenne, his fiance, from across the courtroom, and he blew a little kiss to his daughter who was sitting on her lap. Which, by the way, don't think I'd be taking a little child to a courtroom, but that's fine. But inside prison, Aaron's mental state was going down rapidly. Reports from correctional officers described him as overly paranoid. He was obsessed with his own safety and was in a deep depression. Now, friends and family members visited Aaron as much as they could, but the isolation combined with his sense of betrayal, his mental health just declined. And on April 19th, 2017, a guard was making morning rounds at the Souza Bernardsky Correctional Center in Lancaster, Massachusetts, when they found Aaron Hernandez hanging from a bedsheet tied to the window bars of his cell. Aaron had committed suicide, and he was only 27 years old at the time. Despite attempts trying to revive him, he was pronounced dead shortly after 3 a.m. that day. On the wall beside his bed, Aaron had written biblical verses and left notes. All of them were very cryptic, emotional, and personal. One was addressed to his fiance, another to his daughter, and then one more to his close friend and attorney. News of Aaron's death broke only 5 days after he had been acquitted of the 2012 double homicide. Publicly, it seemed as though his life might been turning a corner from prison, but privately, it was very clear he had been descending into a worse darkness. As for Aaron, he had obviously died from hanging himself. The words John 3:1 was written on his head. Later, once the autopsy was performed, his brain was examined by neuropathologists. Results were absolutely crazy. Aaron Hernandez had one of the most severe cases of CTE ever seen in someone his age. His frontal lobes, the parts that are responsible for judgment, emotion, impulse control, all of them had been shattered. The damage was consistent with years of repeated head trauma, the kind that starts young, potentially before high school sports, and then never stops. When the letters were opened, they read more like goodbyes than confessions. To his fiancée, Cheyenne, he wrote, quote, "You have always been my soulmate. I want you to live life and know I'm always there with you," end quote. To his daughter, he wrote, quote, "Daddy will never leave you. You are my angel," end quote. And to his friend, his attorney, quote, "Tell my story correctly and keep fighting," end quote. In the note to his friend, Aaron also referenced his appeal and there being the law that would erase his conviction if he died before it was complete. And for a brief moment, that's exactly what happened, which is nuts. But in May 2017, a judge vacated Aaron's murder conviction. So legally, in 2017, Aaron Hernandez was no longer guilty of first-degree murder. His record had been wiped clean. But 2 years later, the Massachusetts Supreme Court reinstated the law, stating that no man, living or dead, could escape accountability that way. And so once again, Aaron Hernandez was officially a murderer. well, after the autopsy, they were like, we're donating his body and his brain to the Boston University CTE Center for Studies. And that's where they found out that he had had the worst case of CTE ever recorded for someone his age. According to reports, Aaron's brain was physically deteriorating. There was dead tissue everywhere. A forensic pathologist described it as the brain of a man 3 times his age, destroyed by repeated and constant concussions. When slides of Aaron's brain were published, you could see black holes where neurons should have been. It definitely looked more or less like a brain and more of something that like was being eaten alive from like the inside.
You know, I'm a big football lover. How can you let your children play football after hearing shit like this?
No, I will never. Over half of the NFL football players whose brains have been examined had them in their brain, but you can only find them post-mortem. You can't like
Right.
find out that you have it when you're developing symptoms. They usually get diagnosed with symptoms of something else or misdiagnosed is what I'm trying to say. I could never let my kid play football.
Now, I will say, like, the NFL has started taking more precautions when it comes to stuff with CTs, and I'll talk about it, but like, I still can't imagine. So, after Aaron's death, the courtroom battles didn't stop. First came the wrongful death lawsuit from Odin Lloyd's family against the Hernandez's estate. They sought damages, and the case took forever in probate court due to what was included in the Hernandez estate. He had his mansion and his property, the money from the NFL, endorsement deals, but everyone was quick to realize that most of what Aaron once had vanished overnight. His assets had been drained by legal fees, taxes, repossessions, and in the meantime, his fiancée still fought to protect what little remained, and she did that mostly for their daughter. Cheyenne filed motions, state claims, legal arguments, trying to make sure that their child wouldn't inherit the lack of leftovers from her dad. It pretty much was more about like memory than money for them, but even then, back to Aaron's post-mortem physical state. So at this time, being in like 2015, 2017, the NFL had always danced around the issue of concussions. Like it wasn't a conversation they wanted to have, but the physical evidence of Aaron's brain made it pretty much impossible for them to ignore. In the following weeks after Aaron's brain scans were released, analysts and doctors pretty much lined up every media network possible to ask the questions of like, why was this allowed? How many more players are living like this? Why isn't something being done? And quietly, which I didn't know, behind closed doors, families of other deceased players began requesting brain autopsies too. And most of the results were devastating. There were CTEs everywhere, mostly in linemen, running backs, and even kickers. These were men who had never been violent before, but now were prone to rages, depression, and suicide. And Aaron Hernandez had become the face of something far bigger than just a murder case. He was proof that, you know, our great sport was slowly kind of killing its players. So while the NFL scrambled to control the now news, Aaron's fiancée, Cheyenne, tried to build a new life. She often would give interviews and speak of the sweet, goofy man she had fallen in love with and tried to steer the media away from the monster that they portrayed Aaron to be. Cheyenne also sued the NFL and the New England Patriots for wrongful death, claiming that the league's negligence in the untreated CTE had left Aaron's to spiral and suicide. The lawsuit sought millions for their daughter. They argued that football, not just fate, had taken Aaron away from his family, but the NFL, because of the powerhouse they are, they fought back pretty hard. They claimed that the players understood the risks and that suicide broke the causal chain and that Aaron's crimes couldn't just be blamed on his concussions. Now, this part really sucks. Unfortunately, a judge ultimately dismissed the lawsuit, not due to lack of evidence, but actually Cheyenne and her daughter's legal team had missed a deadline to opt out of a previous class action lawsuit that was against CTEs, and that forbid them from moving forward. Now, that being said, in the years since Aaron Hernandez's death, the NFL has made great changes in their concussion protocols, including having neurologists on the sideline, rule adjustments, and uniform and helmet changes. You'll notice it if you do watch games, but occasionally you'll see a player that has a really big helmet and it looks almost fucking fake because they look like bobbleheads. Like everybody else is wearing like normal outfits and stuff, and then there's like one player with a giant helmet. Well, it turns out, for those people who don't know, that helmet is actually a padded layer on top of a player's helmet. And players have been given an option for a few years now to add that onto their uniform if they want to. And that padding is supposed to help prevent concussions more so than without it. So at the moment, now I haven't researched this at all. This isn't in my script. Just watching NFL games, I can think of only 2 players that I've seen wear them.
There's like 1 or 2 players like per
Yeah.
team that wear them.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I don't think that the safety precaution is gonna be very popular with these big tough men. Has it decreased the amount of concussions?
They have had a decrease overall in the NFL, but I think it was such a minor number. But that also comes along with like, was it because of helmet and padding changes and uniform changes, or was it because of different rule adjustments? Because I know I can think of multiple within the past 5 years that plays that you used to be able to do, you'll get flagged or fined for them now. And you can even get kicked out of games for purposely doing stuff if they think it was purposeful. So if you take all of those plays away, plus, some uniform changes, I think it's a slow number. Do you have a number for us, Kylie?
I have the data. So now the NFL, they have mandatory sessions that all players have to wear them, like practices and stuff. They all have to wear them. And then like at the games, it's optional. But they saw a 17% reduction from 2023 to 2024, and overall a 50% reduction in players that wore the Guardian cap all season.
Well, if you think about how much they practice versus how much they play, and if you're making them wear those special helmets during practice, you would think that that would significantly decrease because, I mean, they're practicing probably tenfold for what they're playing.
Yeah, and I will say, as a football fan, the most injuries happen during practice.
Said only 11 players have worn it so far this season.
Dude, that's not. How many players are in the NFL? Kylie, look it up.
Only 11 players listen to their moms.
There are 1,600 on active roster.
Just letting you know, 11 players out of 1,600, just saying that is 0.6%.
Crazy.
Yeah, not even that's not even 1%, which is nuts.
Wild.
Anyways, regardless of the changes, all of it really didn't come in time to help Aaron potentially change his life and his life's outcome. So that's my story today of Aaron Hernandez, the boy who chased glory, the man who lost control, and the tragedy that forced the world to listen.
So I think I'm ready to watch football.
That's what you got out of this?
This is what you now want to?
It just seems so spicy.
Holly, you're definitely a college girly though.
Really?
I don't think I could see you with NFL.
Well, we've recently had like a coach problem in Arkansas. Yeah. So I've been talking about it with people, and I love to listen to the tea, and I love to talk about the tea, even though I really don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of know,
There's
I will say you'll be able to talk to Kylie and I more if you do.
Okay, I'm gonna try. Just tell me where to start out.
Well, you'll have to start with Auburn because that's Kylie's alma mater.
I do have a podcast recommendation for you.
Oh.
Okay.
It's called The Sports Gossip Show, and it's 2 girls, and it's just the gossip behind professional sports.
Okay.
That's cute.
I could get behind that.
Yeah.
We recently fired our coach, Scottie Pippen, and we've now rehired.
Scottie Pippen is an NBA player.
Oh, sorry. What's his name?
Sam Pittman.
Sam Pittman. You see, they're kind of the same,
I will
Scottie Pippen. Okay. Yeah. We fired him, and now they've rehired Bobby Petrino. I didn't know who that was because he's scandalous.
With his daughter, right? Is he the one with his daughter dating the quarterback of who's that?
That's Lane Kiffin.
That is Lane.
Bobby Petrino got into a motorcycle accident with a hooker on the back of his motorcycle and then showed up to a press conference the next day in a neck brace.
Yeah, you guys are definitely college girlies.
Apparently he won't even go down. He's been the assistant, almost said vice coach, but the assistant coach
The vice president coach.
the vice coach for quite some time, but apparently like he can't stop himself from getting into fights. So he has to like, I don't know, do stuff like stay off the field or something. I'm not really sure.
I keep up with college still. But I'm definitely like there's two different versions. There's college and NFL like followers. That's what either you separate. College, I'm only specific teams, and it's usually because of people I know now. I grew up watching it, but like now, like I've never been a fan of Auburn growing up, and now Cam and I are like diehard Auburn fans just for Kylie.
War Eagle.
Go War
I,
Eagle.
I will say, I
They're
mean,
War Eagles?
Oh my God.
no, don't say that.
Holly, if you don't know what you're talking about, don't.
I don't know anything.
I
I
will say
gotta
we
learn.
also-
I have to learn.
I mean, I prefer college football, but if you want to get into it, I feel like the NFL will be easier because there's only 12 teams.
That would be way easier.
But NFL, what I was going to say is college is like constant scandal every year. It's something different. NFL, it's the same shit going on for years. So it's very juicy because it's long term. Like you don't have as many turnovers as you do with college, especially with the new rules.
Yeah, I'm in it for the drama.
Like college is like juicy drama. NFL is like he killed someone. There people are killing each other all the time.
Or sometimes in college too.
Oh, wow.
Those are
Okay.
usually involving like cars and races and shit, which is nuts.
Interesting. I like to listen to people talk about it.
Oh, you know what? Overtimes can now be football overtimes.
Oh no.
And I chit chat about the shit happening on the street that week. Holly, you listen in to learn.
I'll just listen. I probably don't need to talk for a while.
We'll make you one of these days. You'll come in and you'll have to tell us the dirt on the street.
Tell me the guy's name we fired again. Not Scotty.
Scotty
Sam
Pippen.
Sam Pittman.
Sam Pittman. Yeah. I felt bad for him. I'm an empath and I think he tried really hard.
No, I will say very normal.
Okay, wait, I have an idea. Kate, you're NFL, I'm college. What if we put Holly onto NBA since you love Scottie Pippen? Because he was married to Larsa Pippen, ex-best friend of Kim Kardashian. She cheated on
Love
Scottie
Larsa.
Pippen with the rapper Future, and
Yeah.
then she dumped Future and she was dating Michael Jordan's son, who is
Son.
Scottie Pippen's arch nemesis.
Scottie
Who happened
Pippen's
to be
basketball.
Coke.
Yes.
Yeah. Who happened to be a Coke addict. And now she's dating a 31-year-old basketball player. And
Shut
she's
up, I'm on
also-
it.
She's also on the Housewives of Miami, and I watch her every week.
Yeah, you might be an NBA girl.
Okay, yeah. That's why his name sounded familiar because I think I hear his name a lot.
He's long gone. When it
Yeah, but I
comes
think but I think I hear his name, you know?
to- yeah, like Michael Jordan.
Yep, that sounds familiar.
It should okay.
Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant,
All right.
LeBron James.
LeBron.
Ron. Oh, I got some crime drama, NFL drama for you, Holly.
Okay.
Okay, so there was this quarterback for the Jets. His name was Mark Sanchez.
Yeah, let's talk about this.
Very good looking man, I will say.
Okay. He's now a commentator.
So he's on ESPN, he commentates the games and stuff. He was in Indianapolis the night before he was supposed to commentate for a game.
This
and
was a week ago.
Okay.
he's out pacing around, like shadow boxing in the alley, drunk as fuck. And there's like some DoorDash delivery guy or something like sitting in his car, and Mark Sanchez stabbed him. And the delivery guy, who's like 60 something years old, like pepper sprayed him and stuff.
And then the news went out that Mark Sanchez had been in a car robbery stabbing situation, and he was in the hospital. And then the next day they published, oh shit, no, it actually was him doing the stabbing and car robbery. And he has
What?
felony charges against him. He's super well known, Holly. Like he's
Wow.
famous. And now
That's
he's
wild.
being held on 3 felony charges. 65-year-old man made it, by the way. He's alive.
Yes, Mark, like he just got out of the hospital. He got injured as well, and he had to go straight from the hospital, like turn himself in. But they haven't fired him yet.
No, which is crazy to me.
They fire people so quickly on those things.
Yeah. He is
Wow.
an OG, but like he was definitely things that I've said, like seen all said, like he was drunk, like in the alleyway, and
Mhm.
he was doing something and the delivery driver's car was there. And so Mark couldn't do what he wanted to do or whatever. And so he was asking the man to move his car, and the man said no. And that's when Mark just started stabbing him. Not funny at all. That guy had
Wow.
pepper spray. Really smart move, because if you saw Mark Sanchez, He's a big fit guy.
I mean, I personally could not comprehend getting drunk and then just like fucking around in an alley by myself at that hour.
Right.
But Mark Sanchez,
Gives me that.
I could see it.
Anyways, well, that's all of your juice and gossip for this week. We're now going to be sports commentators at Over My Dead Pod on the weekends. We'll be watching football, texting Holly all the updates, making sure she's kept up to speed. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Over My Dead Pod. If you want even more information about the case today, you can check us out on our website at overmydeadpod.com. Be sure to subscribe, follow, like, comment, love on us on our social medias. Please, por favor. We love you guys. We'll see you next week with another episode. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.